strangely strange.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Lurtson.
Hi, I'm Saskia England.
And welcome to another episode of On the Track.
In 1558, the preacher John Knox described the fairer sex as the monstrous regiment of women. Well, I certainly wouldn't go that far, but it does have to be said that this month's episode of On the Track is basically put together and all about the people who my dear wife says I can no longer call chicks, even though the term comes from the Spanish for girl rather than from anything derogatory. So what was it you saw, Charlotte?
Well, when I was at Harlan Quay yesterday with my friends, I saw an eel, and I'm trying to find out what eel it was. So it was about this long, it was about that thick, and it had barbels at the front and had like in the bagpuss mice, it had that kind of face. So I'm trying to find out what it was.
What colour was it?
It was like a grey colour, but it was quite dark, so I couldn't really see, but I think it was a grey colour.
We'll be back with Charlotte and her search for the mystery eel later on. But first, it's over to our old friend, Beth Tyler. How long have you had the fish, Beth?
About 2 years, and he's got a bit too big for my tank. They come to live in your pond.
Sounds lovely. Graham, would you like to do the honours?
Shall I tip him in over that side so you can see
Yes.
what's going on?
But do fairly quickly, we've only got one bar of electricity left on this camera.
Oh, I'm gonna love it. I'm gonna love it. Oh my goodness.
Ready?
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
He went backwards.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, and who's this little fellow here, Beth?
That little muggy, my magpie, and she came to me from a woman in Barnstable. She fell out of a nest, I think, and the woman wasn't able to put her back. So she brought her over to me, and I've been hand-rearing her ever since for about the last few weeks, and now she's come to live with you.
That's lovely, and hopefully she'll be, if she's strong enough to be let go and everything's good, she'll go back into the wild.
Yeah, definitely.
In the garden here.
In the garden here.
Because it's totally safe here.
It's lovely.
We have one cat that hunts and 2 cats that just sleep all day, so...
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Here, this way.
Oh!
This is like an airlock. That door shuts, then we open that.
I see, okay.
This is Maggie. Just going to park up there.
Roll on about 6 weeks, and here are Karina and Charlotte, with Saskia on camera, going into the aviary to catch the magpie, who's now much plumper, much stronger, and ready to be released. But that's more easily said than done.
Here.
Can you see him from where you are?
Yeah.
Poor little fellow's terrified. But we carefully tried to get him not habituated to human company, which is why we put him up in the top aviary with the pheasant, rather than one of the 2 bottom aviaries where people go and are passing all the time. So the fact that he is terrified actually probably means that he's got a better chance of survival out in the wild.
Just one quick swipe.
And just like Saskia said, it took one quick swipe, and the poor little fellow was struggling in the big net. And next comes the moment of truth. Would he be able to fly away? We all hoped so. He stayed cowering in the boundary fence for a while, but within half an hour he'd gone, hopefully to go out and live a happy, magpie-orientated lifestyle out in the wild. But sadly, not all such rescues have such a happy ending.
So, Helen, baby bird. Where did you find the baby bird?
In my garden.
And you,
It fell out of a tree.
right. And so, why did you've got lots of cats?
Yeah, I got 8 of them and they were all there watching. So I did put it back in the eggs, but all the cats was gathering, so I didn't want to leave it.
Right, and you've
Because
got
I think the cats would have killed it.
yeah, and you've got the 2 dogs as well, which
Yeah.
were showing an interest.
Yeah, Millie was.
Yeah. So you brought your managers. You tried Beth, who's at the Heartland Wildlife
Yeah,
Rescue,
there's no answer.
and there's no answer. So we're going to try and look after the little bird here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It was a baby blackbird, but unlike this one, which is a piece of library footage, it soon died. Whenever possible, if you find baby birds that appear to have fallen out of nests, leave them. The parents usually are within watching distance and will feed them until they are ready to fly. However, in this case, Helen was perfectly correct to bring it to us because the cats would undoubtedly have killed it and eaten it. Sometimes nature just is rather unkind. This has happened twice in the last few weeks. But the magpie is not the only success story. One night, Karina and I were in my office when the orange kitten, variously known as Peanut or Captain Phenobulax the Magnificent, depending who you speak to, came in through the front door with a very unhappy-looking vole in its mouth. The prognosis with rescuing small rodents from cats is even poorer than it is rescuing birds. But we tried, and figured that it was better for the animal to die in the warm and in the quiet than being eaten alive by a cat. So we rescued it and we put it inside a little plastic potato salad box. Put a towel over it, left it in the kitchen. And I must admit that I forgot about it. But the next day Karina came in very happily and announced that not only had the vole survived the night, but it had eaten its breakfast and was looking very perky, and it was time to release it. So this is exactly what we did. Karina, Graham and Archie went down to the boundary hedge which separates our property from Mr. Jen's field, and they let the little fellow go. Animal rescue is very important to us, and although on many occasions things don't work out for the best, it is lovely and very heartwarming on the occasions that they do. Some people ask me why we bother rescuing some small rodent, but if you really have to ask that question, you're not the sort of person I want to be watching this show. Regular viewers will have met Helen's son Dan before. Oh, bloody hell, hi Dan.
That's what I wanted to show you. If I zoom in.
Oh, lovely. They are almost certainly,
There were loads of them.
probably large white. I'll show you.
So is that like a nest of them or something?
Yeah.
Thought it would have been. Because you can see there, quite blurry, there's 2 there, like stood up on their guard. So that's what made me think it was a nest, and there's loads of black dots as well, you see, so I'm guessing they're eggs or something.
I think so. Yeah. Well, we've solved one problem, but what about Charlotte's mystery eel? Okay, so what is it?
We think, or we're pretty sure at least, that it is a shore rockling. Shore rocklings are pretty much matched Charlotte's description. However, they're more of a browny colour, but we think due to the light it wasn't so. It appeared to be grey.
So how many different sorts of fish did you have to look at to find out what it was?
Well, first we looked at a baby. I thought we looked at a baby conger eel, and that kind of matched my description, but I didn't have the barbels. Then we looked at a baby moray eel, which also didn't match. But and then we had a look at a butterfish.
A butterfish, yeah.
And some others.
But then from knowledge of the fish within our oceans, I took a guess and searched out the picture, and it turned out to be one.
Well, because right from the beginning it couldn't have been actually an eel, because there aren't any eels with barbels as far as I know.
No.
Well, well done girls, you've done jolly well. Science is about asking questions and trying to find the best answers. However, we do have some sad news for you. A few weeks ago we found Lobby the lobster dead in his tank one morning. He had been eating and looking perfectly normal until the evening before, and as we know very little about the physiology of such creatures, we can't really say what happened. And then, a few days ago, something, either a rat or a weasel, got into the quail aviary, and I'm afraid we have no more quail. But we live in the country, this stuff happens, and it's time to dust ourselves down and move on. We do have new arrivals in the shape of this family of Japanese fire-bellied newts, filmed here most masterfully by Charlotte. As you've probably noticed, things are a bit difficult at the Centre for Fortean Zoology at the moment. Things are doing okay, but we're victims of our own success. And also, we're in a time of change. The personal circumstances of quite a few people who've worked very hard for the CFZ over the years have changed drastically, and so there are quite a few new faces and a lot of old faces that you won't be seeing anymore. And then you have people like Richard. Dear Richard Freeman's got a full-time job at the moment, and he isn't able to put any of the time that he used to put into CFZ activities into it. So, this is why this episode of On the Track is 6 weeks late. This is why there still hasn't been a 2014 yearbook. And this is why we are so far behind with our publication schedule, including the next edition of Animals and Men, which is very much overdue. We've also had problems with the Weird Weekend. As you will have noticed if you've been reading the blogs, we've had a change of venue. After 8 years of being at Wolseley Community Centre, we have a difference of opinion with the people who run the community centre, and we are now at the small school in Hartland, which is an educational establishment, a very small, as the name implies, educational establishment, which really ticks all the boxes as far as we're concerned, correcting what is wrong with mainstream education in this country these days. The money raised by the food sold at the Weird Weekend was going to go to the small school anyway, and we're overjoyed that we're now holding the entire event there, and a large proportion of the money raised will be going straight into the small school activities. The small school was started in the early 1980s by Satish Kumar, an Indian freethinker who was a friend of Gandhi, and we are very proud and pleased to be able to help his vision for the education of the young people of this part of North Devon to continue. Weird Weekend? I hear you ask, who's on at the Weird Weekend this year? Well, that's a bloody good question. Let's have a look. Bong. The Weird Weekend this year is going to be an extra special one. In no particular order, let me introduce some of the guests. We have the amazing Judge Smith, best known as the original drummer of Van de Graaff Generator and a songwriter, composer, performer and author in his own right. This is his second appearance at the Weird Weekend, where he will be talking about his new book, The Vibrating Spirit, which is the second in his Judex trilogy, making a scientific exploration of life after death. We have the irrepressible Richard Freeman, talking about the first CFZ expedition to Tasmania, which took place last November. We have Nick Waddell, the proprietor of Bugfest and the author of Henry Owl, and he's talking about alien abductions. We have Ronan Coghlan, and we always have Ronan Coghlan We couldn't do a Weird Weekend without him. He's coming all the way from the land of the bogs and the little people to give 2 talks. The first on bogus Bibles, and the second on Oannes, the amphibians out of space. All the way from the Royal Society of Protection of Birds press office, we have got Tony Whitehead talking about new species of birds in Britain, the ones which are going to become established in the next few years, if you like. That is, the cryptozoology of the future. We have the immortal, invisible and utterly wonderful John Higgs, an author whom I admire very much, talking about a band whom I admire even more, the KLF. Does KLF stand for King Lucifer Forever? Does it stand for the Copyright Liberation Front? Or does it stand for the Kings of the Low Frequency? Nobody actually knows, but what we do know is that there's an awful lot of peculiar, strange, magical and Fortean aspects to the band. But it goes further than that. John has extrapolated an extraordinary explanation for what is almost certainly their most notorious prank. And we have C.J. Stone, another author whom I admire greatly, who is talking about a modern King Arthur. Yes, Arthur Uther Pendragon, the road protester, environmental campaignist, and the bloke who took the British government to the High Court to get permission to wear his sword in public. A few years ago, our next speaker came to visit us, and we took him down to Fremington Quay with the dog, and we took the dog out for a walk, and an old lady looked at me and said, "What sort of dog have you got?" And I said, "Well, I think that she's half boxer, half bulldog, but there's something else involved. But look over there, see my friend there with the beard? He's a Great Dane. Yes, he's a Great Dane all the way from Denmark. It's Lars Thomas, Copenhagen's Mr. Entertainment." We have Matt Salisbury with a talk with the intriguing title of Maurice de Rothschild's Dinotherium Caper. And if you didn't know what a Dinotherium is, it's a very primitive type of elephant, thought to have been long extinct. And all the way from Cheshire, we have the immortal Mr. Glenn Vaudrey, whose company, Vaudrey Arts, is one of the sponsors of this festival. Thank you very much, Glenn, for your generosity. And while we're talking about sponsors, I'd also like to thank Eric Norlander and his company, Think Tank Media, and Rob Ailing and his company, Gonzo Multimedia, who've also sponsored the Weird Weekend this year. But there's more. We have Lee Walker talking about urban legends of Liverpool, and I've read his book, and it's absolutely magnificent. It's one of the scariest things we've ever published. But who else do we have? Well, we have a really exciting explorer next. We have Richard Thorns talking about his return to Burma in search of the pink-headed duck. The pink-headed duck was a bird that's supposed to have gone extinct many years ago, but Richard believes it can still be found in the lost lands beyond the ranges, as Kipling put it. We also have Hunt Emerson, the legendary British cartoonist, talking about the Fortean cartoons. And we have, who else do we have? Oh yeah, it's me. We've got me, John Downs, fat bloke, long hair, white jacket, always asks people to give him money. You know the guy I mean. We have music from the lovely Miss Crystal Grenade, channeling her alter ego, a late 19th century Victorian freak show performer. And an existentialist. I've never really understood what existentialism is. Perhaps you'll be able to enlighten me. We have a bar, we have luscious home-cooked food, and we have the Tunnel of Goats. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Weird Weekend 2014 is as silly as ever, and I think I can truthfully say there is no other event quite like it anywhere in the world. Please come along and give us your support. We really, really would love to see you. For more information, go to www.weirdweekend.org or telephone 01237 431 413. It's only £25 a head for adults for the whole weekend, and if you're under 16, you get in for free. If you live in the village of Harkland, the village of Clovelly, the village of Wolseley, or the village of Welcome, you also get a very, very special and bloody big discount. But now back to the world of cryptozoology, because there's been something very peculiar happening in the skies of Britain in the last month. The yellow-legged or scarce tortoiseshell is a butterfly that's only ever once been found in Britain, in 1953. Then in November last year a dead one was found in the Shetland Islands. This was almost certainly came in an import of wood from Eastern Europe, but it seemed to be an omen, because in the last month there have been loads of them turning up all over Western Europe. There's a whole plague of them in the Netherlands, and well over a dozen at least have turned up in the UK. Could the UK have a new species? It certainly looks possible. They only turned up in Sweden about 5 years ago, but within 2 years they'd colonised best part of the country. Could the same thing happen here? Well, I for one certainly hope so. The British butterflies have been very beleaguered of late, and although this is the second good year on the trot, it is exciting when we get a completely new species turn up, and the idea that it could soon become a genuine British resident is even more exciting. As I'm sure you know, one of the most important parts of what the CFZ does is animal rescue, and our friend Beth Tyler from Heartland Wildlife Rescue has asked us if we will foster a couple of hedgehogs which are not going to be able to be released. Well, of course we will. And what's more, we've got just the person to do it. As you know, Saskia England is doing a placement with us as a student as part of her diploma in animal management. One of her assignments is to learn about designing and building cages for specific animals. And so she and Graham sat down at the metaphorical drawing board and designed this palatial run for hedgehogs. These hedgehogs, remember, cannot be released into the wild, but hopefully will make themselves at home in the garden. And when we have got the garden archy and hedgehog proof, they will have free run of the place. But now it's time to go over to my lovely wife Karina and our regular monthly visit to the Watcher of the Skies.
I've always felt a curious affinity with this species of bird, probably because for 30 years I was a secretary, and this is a secretary bird. A highly specialised ground-dwelling bird of prey from an older family than the other Old World raptors. It is native to sub-Saharan Africa and is sadly non-migratory, so will never be a natural visitor to these shores. But I think you'd be surprised quite how many completely unexpected avian visitors Britain does have, and that's what this segment of On the Track is all about. Bernard Heuvelmans himself said that cryptozoology wasn't the study of monsters, but the study of unexpected animals, and in the UK what could be more unexpected than vultures, spoonbills and albatrosses? Yes, even the kings of the Southern Ocean have been seen in British waters. 2 species of albatross have been recorded in the UK in recent years. Not all of our feathered visitors are quite so spectacular, but nearly every day there is something exciting to greet the Watcher of the Skies. During the second week of May, Fair Isle was visited by a hermit thrush, which is the 10th for Britain with 2 more in Ireland and the 3rd in spring, following Shetland records from Fair Isle in early June 1975 and Fetlar in April-May 1998. This bird lives in a wide variety of habitats ranging from boreal forests of far north to deciduous woods and mountain forests. During winter, hermit thrushes often occupy lower elevation forests with dense understory and berry bushes, including pine, broadleaf evergreen and deciduous woods. In spring, the hermit thrush eats mainly insects such as beetles, caterpillars, bees, ants, wasps and flies. They also occasionally eat small amphibians and reptiles, and in the winter they change their diet to eat more fruit, including wild berries. You're pretending to be a bittern now, are you? They sometimes forage by foot quivering, where they shake bits of grass with their feet to get insects. On the 19th of May, a Bermuda petrel was seen and photographed near Slee Head in County Kerry, which is the first record in Irish waters. The world population of this bird is tiny, no more than 500 or so. Mature individuals are thought to survive. But the population does seem to be on the increase. It is a gadfly petrel and is commonly known in Bermuda as a cahow or cahow, a name derived from its eerie cries. It's a nocturnal ground-nesting seabird and is the national bird of Bermuda. It spends most of its adult life at sea, and 5 years old it returns to its former nesting place and begins breeding. They mate for life. Considered by some to be the first for Greater Manchester, a male little bittern was spotted at Elton Reservoir near Bury on the 25th of May and is the first to be spotted in the UK this year. The last local record was of an unseasonable juvenile near Worsley, found on the first peacetime Boxing Day after the Second World War, the 26th of December 1945 no less, when the area was a part of Lancashire. Coincidentally, a different bird, a female, had been identified in the same area in the May of that same year. Little bittern breeds in Central Europe, east to western China and south to northwest Africa, and winters south. It is classed as a scarce visitor but has bred here in the past. It can be found on reed bed and swamp and feeds mostly at dusk and dawn, on fish, amphibians and insects on the water's edge. It was first recorded here in 1782 in Dorset. It was first thought to have bred here in Norfolk at South Walsham Broad in the 19th century, but breeding was not confirmed until 1984 when 3 chicks were raised in South Yorkshire. An adult slender-billed gull was recorded at Titchwell RSBB in Norfolk on Bank Holiday Monday afternoon and is the first confirmed British record since 2000. The slender-billed gull breeds widely at isolated, scattered localities from Senegal, Mauritania and the southern east of the Iberian Peninsula through to the Mediterranean, Black Sea, Asia Minor and the Middle East. It winters in much of the Mediterranean, Black Sea and Caspian Sea. This gull breeds on the coasts of landlocked seas, on sand pits, beaches and islands with mudflats and marshes in shallow tidal waters. Out of breeding season, this bird is almost entirely coastal, frequenting shallow inshore waters and salt pans, although it generally avoids harbours. It feeds on fish as well as insects and marine invertebrates. On the 18th of May came the arrival of a great reed warbler in Cambridgeshire at Neeny Washes. It is a migrant breeder and a passage visitor and usually breeds in Europe and near Eastern and Central Asia, wintering in tropical Africa. It lives in reed bed and scrub and feeds on insects and spiders as well as small snails. In many birds the eye colour changes with age, and the reed warblers have a charcoal iris in their first year, which changes to an olive brown one when reaching adulthood. The young also have spots on their tongues, as do many other species, which presumably helps guide the feeding parents. Britain's third short-toed eagle was discovered at Morden Bog in Dorset on the 31st, also known as the short-toed snake eagle. This is an old world species that has spread throughout the Mediterranean basin and into Russia and the Middle East. A bird on the Isle of Scilly, Britain, in October 1999 was the first confirmed record for that particular country. This particular country, in fact. It is found in open cultivated plains, arid, stony, deciduous scrub areas and foothills and semi-desert areas. It requires trees for nesting. On the 2nd of June, the highlight of the day was a singing male spectacled warbler at Burnham Overy Dunes in Norfolk. This represents the 8th British record and the first twitchable record for Norfolk, with the only previous individual there being on Scolt Head Island on the 6th of May 2011, and suppressed. The spectacled warbler breeds in northwest Africa, southwest Europe from Iberia to Italy, and then further east on the eastern Mediterranean islands and coastal regions. It is mainly resident in Africa, but other populations migrate to winter more widely in North and West Africa and Egypt. The bird is a rare vagrant to North and Western Europe, and it also occurs in some Atlantic islands. On the 16th of June, the highlight of the day was the discovery of a bridled tern in an Arctic tern colony on Fair Isle. Classed as an accidental visitor to our shores, this bird breeds on islands in the Pacific, the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean and ranges tropical seas. It lives on coral islets and is otherwise pelagic. It feeds on small fish and planktonic invertebrates picked from the surface, often by hovering. It was first recorded here in Kent in 1931. A black-winged pratincoll was seen at Hawksley Nature Reserve in Northumberland on the 12th of June. Classed as an accidental visitor, this bird breeds from southeastern Europe to Central Asia and winters in Africa. Its natural habitat is steppe and dry flats, and its diet consists of mostly insects, especially beetles and grasshoppers or locusts. It was first recorded here in 1908 in North Yorkshire. And that is it for this time, so now it's over to Jonathan for this month's Look New and Rediscovered Species.
Strangely strange, but oddly normal.
An Australian-led expedition says that it has discovered 3 new mammal species in Papua New Guinea, releasing for the first time a picture of one of the animals, a tiny wallaby. More than 40 camera traps were set up in 2 little studied mountains in the remote Torricelli range in northeast Papua New Guinea during the 4-month study. The Dostupulus wallaby, a small marsupial, was captured on camera, as well as a Dumbo mouse with giant ears and Antechinus, a sort of shoe-like marsupial. Scientists from the California Academy of Sciences have discovered a new species of round-eared sengi, or elephant shrew, in the remote deserts of southwestern Africa. This is the 3rd new species of elephant shrew to be discovered in the wild in the past decade. It's also the smallest known member of the 19 senges in the order Macrocelidae. The team's discovery and description of the Etekenda round-eared sengi, Macrocelides micus, is published in the Journal of Mammalogy. While collecting and examining sengi specimens from southwestern Africa, Drs. Jack Dumbacher and Galen Rathbun encountered an unusual specimen collected in the remote northwestern region of Namibia that differed in appearance from any of the museum specimens that they had examined previously. The specimen was significantly smaller, had rust-coloured fur, a large hairless gland on the underside of its tail, and lacked dark skin pigment. Preliminary genetic analysis also showed important differences between this specimen and close relatives. Comparing the specimens to those in natural history collections in Windhoek, Pretoria, London, Los Angeles and the Academy in San Francisco, and further genetic analysis confirmed that they had in fact found a new species, demonstrating the critical role that scientific collections play in biodiversity studies. More than a century after it was lost, the New Guinea big-eared bat has been rediscovered by Queensland researchers working in Papua New Guinea's forests. The critically endangered bat was thought to be extinct, and the discovery shows that there is still much to learn about biodiversity in the region. On 25th of July 2012, Catherine Hughes and Julie Broken-Brow caught a small female bat in a trap at the edge of the forest in southeast Papua New Guinea, but the bat didn't match any species known to exist, and so began a fascinating detective story about a species that hadn't been spotted for over 120 years. As part of a fauna survey, Catherine and Julie ventured into the lowland forests 200 kilometres southeast of Port Moresby in a region known as the Cloudy Bay Forest Management Area. The survey was part of a University of Queensland study carried out with the permission of local landowners and sponsored by Cloudy Bay Sustainable Forestry Limited, which manages the area. One aim of the project was to determine how small insectivorous bats, known as microbats, respond to sustainably harvested forests over time. Not enough is known about the biology of microbats throughout the world, and particularly in Papua New Guinea. When Catherine and Julie captured their bat on the edge of logged forest near an old coconut plantation now covered in grassland, they thought it was either the small-toothed Nyctophilus or a Pherotis, the genus to which the New Guinea big-eared bat belonged. In March 2014, the bat was loaned to the Australian Museum in Sydney, where researcher Harry Parnaby identified it as Pherotis imogene, the New Guinea big-eared bat. It's the first record of the species since 1890, meaning that this bat was missing in action for the entire 20th century. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody who has helped in the last few months, particularly Graham, Richard, Dave Braun Phillips, my lovely wife Karina, and Andrea, who comes into the office several days a week now, Mark Rains, who does the gardening twice a week, Charlotte, Saskia, and Charlotte's parents, Andy and Amy. That's just a few for starters. There's an awful lot of other people who get involved, and that's what I want to talk to you now for a few seconds. Earlier on I admitted that we're really up against the wall at the moment. We have got too few people doing too much stuff. So if there's anybody out there watching this who'd like to get involved, who'd like to help with the daily blogs, for example, please get in touch. I want to keep the CFZ service as good as it always has been. But without the manpower I'm not going to be able to, so please, if you want to volunteer some time, and you can give us some time, please get in touch. Next month's the Weird Weekend, and there won't be another On the Track now until September. And in September something else exciting has happened. Karina and I become grandparents. So sometime in September, depending on what date Olivia gives birth, there will be another On the Track, and eventually I hope that normal service will be resumed. Until that beautiful day, be seeing you.
Strangely strange, but oddly normal.